Okay, welcome. It's Franco Ucci with Thursdays with Franco, where we try and talk all things all autonomous and Apex and how to get things moving quicker with your own data digital innovation. Special guest today is Jason Reinhardt, Headquarters Product Management for the autonomous database area. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Good, Franco. Hi, everybody. Good to see a number of familiar faces this week.
It is good. It is good. So today's focus is about CloudWorld, observations and things we could take note of to actually help our autonomous Apex and data journeys. So yep. Jason, your initial thoughts about CloudWorld?
I'll touch on some of the items with autonomous, but generally it was great to see people face to face, like to see the exhibition halls, not as big as previous years, obviously, but there was still over 10,000 people. The keynotes were all full, so that all looked really good. I didn't feel there was a lot of big announcements, but there's a subtlety in the messaging which I think is actually a really good change. As an example, we've been talking about sort of multi-cloud for a number of years, and we've got some, our Azure Interconnect and ODSA and various other services. But I thought Larry's messaging around it was a lot more collaborative, not as confrontational as it has been before. So before we've said, we're better than them, so you're going to have multiple, but use us. Whereas it seemed to be a lot more, we'll choose the right provider and, we'll help integrate. I don't know if people saw in Clay's presentation, there was a small sort of demo that showed connecting into AWS and doing some work there with HeatWave. I don't think that's an available option right now, but it shows the direction we're going, where we're just going to say, look, let's just partner properly. Let's just make customers choose our products on merit. And then once again, that cloud anywhere strategy. I think we've all heard, the cloud or the compute cloud at customer and, DRCC being a bit smaller. They're not available right now, but I think if you're looking at the direction we're going, it's a really, really positive one. So, yeah.
Yeah, I spent a bit of time looking at those keynotes. I do like Larry's messaging about, we're here to support and solve some of the world's hardest problems.
Yep.
And when you look at I tend to call them these big data-driven innovation bulldozers that we've got available that you can use for small jobs and you can use for big jobs. And I totally love Larry's little comments, like if I walk into a shop to buy a watch or something, it doesn't matter where you are globally, you can get instant information about my credit worthiness, my purchasing history, if I can buy a $20,000 watch, versus if I walk into a hospital, but I've got to fill out this load of paperwork, and then people are struggling to work out how to manage the process.
It's a real message. I picked up on that as well. It really resonates, that they hold all this information about us when it's about us being a consumer and buying something, but when it's about our health, whatever. So I think that was a really good analogy as to some of the challenges in that space, for sure.
And he talked, because I probably was a part of what was going on in the last couple of years with folks like yourself and a few others on this cast, the role autonomous and Apex play to actually stand something up really quickly and then spend a bit of time just, making sure just because we can build this thing, are we doing the right thing with a HA, DR, security perspective? All of that extra effort was being applied, and APIs and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that got that message was a little subtler, and you had to listen out for it because he didn't sort of mess it and put it out front like he normally does. But how quick we created things, how you don't have to worry about things. I think he overstated the DR switch over if something went wrong at one point. But like the message that you can do all this on a platform that's got all of these considerations implemented is very strong for sure.
Yeah. And obviously we all loved listening to Christian Horner in the SAFRA catch up, and hearing about what their not only their success thus far, but what they're doing with our capability to help them create their new future with their new engine, and the role we're going to play there.
Yeah,
anyway,
definitely a key message in the keynote of SAFRA. So that was very positive for hopefully our partnership moving forward as well. Sounds really good that they're getting good outcomes.
Yeah. Okay. So what else did you pick up? What are some of the other elements?
So the like 23C, obviously, big announcement from the database side. It's our next keynote, our next long-term release. Doesn't mean that we want everyone moving to the long-term release, but it means there's a path for people to get onto that if the new features that are released in 23C are what customers want. So, from a technology perspective, it's a big deal when we release our major releases. So a lot of interest there. I think it does mean that some of the features we've been talking about, we can start getting people to use, because they're not going to just stay on for a year and then have to move. So that sort of definitely opens up some new innovation, new development conversations. Obviously the converged database, the data anywhere, the integration, processing across different sources, that's all still going to be is a key differentiator. And then finally, obviously I'll get into autonomous, but then Juan Loaiza doing a whole keynote on JSON in the Oracle database, like that's almost unheard of. Normally, it would be around, either autonomous or Exadata in the past. This is basic, to me, it's another shift in direction. As I say, the multi-cloud is we're going to work better with other providers and make it easier. The focus for Juan to do a keynote on JSON and that duopoly or dualicity or whatever we've called it, where we can do JSON and relational, on the same data. I think that really shows a commitment to engaging with the developers and not telling the developers what they aren't doing well, but getting into the mind of the developers to make it easier for them to do it. Because I think that's been one of the things we haven't done so well in the past. So yeah, I thought that was pretty important.
I actually concur with where you're going with that conversation. I think for old dogs like myself, I had to be forced to actually touch for JSON stuff in the database. And I'm lucky I had people like Stuart and Karthik and, saying we need to do this session and let's build this thing. And then I ended up finding a worldwide beer tasting catalog all in JSON. And I think it's a while ago now, but I've used it many times where you load up something like 110,000 JSON documents into the database. And if you want to keep using them as JSON documents, you can. You can update them, etc. But then you can just start interacting with them also straight away with standard SQL, with relational views, whether you want to build a clever Apex app or use Oracle Analytics or put an API on front of it, you're then starting to realize, hey, I can live in the JSON world, and in parallel, I can have all my SQL buddies doing what they like doing.
And I think that's so we've sort of had some element of that in the past, but it's been more, look, we can store it and you can run queries and create some sort of views over it. But I think we're really now getting into the it's a key area of development. As I say, for Juan to present on that, and we're really trying to address, the converged story of you can put it in here and do things. Well, if you can't do what you want to do without changing how you do it, then it's not really, the message is a little bit misleading. I think we're focused on actually implementing that, and being able to do updates and we're basically creating relational integrity between them so you can keep the data consistent. We're actually addressing some of the problems of developing with that technology as well. So yeah, I thought it was really positive. Now, obviously that's more 23C. 23C is only in beta. So we're not quite there yet, but it's a great direction moving forward. Yeah.
And there are lots of things you can do out of the box with our current release with JSON and MongoDB API.
And we already, so we have the Mongo API for autonomous database. That's all getting so becoming native in 23C. But even that API is now through ORDs basically being supported in dedicated autonomous and cloud customer autonomous. So yeah, there's lots of different, we do an announcement and some of it comes back, some goes forward. But now, as I say, 23C is pretty pivotal.
Yeah. And what else?
So let me just have a look at what I've got. So there was a lot of like obviously a lot of keynotes, a lot of sessions in the autonomous database. One thing that I thought I'd share, because I've sort of tried to, we started, we've been doing it for a little while, but it's nice when the message gets into the broader capability. Like your team, Franco, do it all the time. Like autonomous, you're not talking so much about autonomous, you talk about autonomous and Apex. Well, obviously, we've had a number of sessions on here about using database actions and various, capabilities within that. Well, they've actually, in one of the keynotes, they actually shared the fact that the autonomous database is actually more, let me just bring this up, sorry. Talking and trying to share, there we go.
Yeah, it's interesting, autonomous is so good and I love talking about it. But what's probably interesting is when you're talking to customers and trying to work out what they're trying to achieve, I don't end up talking to autonomous. It's like, help me understand what you're trying to achieve here on this picture. I used to say on the whiteboard, but now we tend to draw it in a Zoom session. And then we say, hey, give me some data. Oh, you haven't got it, but okay, I can synthetically, create something for you, and bang, let's stand this thing up. And we don't often even mention this is only possible because of the power and the speed and the self-automation type stuff of autonomous. So yeah, it's, we couldn't live without it given what we do, speed and innovation wise now.
And that's sort of where, this is all sort of understood, but now, it's the tools, that whole ecosystem that you're getting as well. So, previously the sessions would say, autonomous is that, but now we're starting to get into the built-in tools, and, the built-in tools are starting to talk more about what you can do, not how you manage it. And I think, we're starting to get that message starting to slowly transition across. A few other things that I thought were really good was, like, these are pretty impressive numbers. 22,000 autonomous databases provisioned every month.
Wow.
So, 250,000 across a year. So, there is momentum building. We're seeing it, I'm starting to see it a lot more probably in the last 6 months. I know, you and your team have really driven autonomous for a number of years, but, the number of, people on these calls that reach out just with a simple question, and you say, oh, what are you doing? And you find out, oh, we're doing, someone sends me a CPAT request, and I look at it and say, oh, hang on, that's for dedicated. Did you put the right parameter in? Yeah, we're looking at dedicated. Like, dedicated conversations mean we're actually looking at consolidating, tens or hundreds of databases potentially. And I've had, 2 or 3 of those requests in the last month, just as it is. So, it's, and that's the other part is, it's the customers who are now starting to do the if not, why not? The customers are starting to go, I don't want to do the patching. You're right. It's not strategic for me to have these highly paid resources doing it. I want them to do more. So, I feel like there's a bit of a shift, but, these are massive numbers across the globe. 250,000 across a year is pretty impressive, I think.
That's brilliant. 22,000 databases provisioned in a month. And yes, they're all about the 2 to 3 minute mark. That is so impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this statistic, I don't know, like it's a big number, but what's it relative to? You know, all numbers are big relative to another number, but it still means we're doing a lot of processing. I think the number of databases to me is a real standout.
Stuart said that it's just our team. I shouldn't be laughing.
What did you say? Oh, that's
so,
your team. Yes, I guess the question is how many are then removed, but
no, but well, I think the point is that, hey, we can have a conversation and say, well, let's give this a test. Let's give it a try. In the, let's say, if I'm in the SQL Server world, or I'm in a, let's say, another world, you'd have to really say, I want to do this, and I really want to do it, and I'm probably going to have to feed it, look after it, etc. Whereas with an autonomous database, I've got a few out there, and I've got a couple out there that have been out there since December 2018, and they just don't miss a beat. And
well, that's it. I think once we do get people using it, like there is a hump. There is a hump of doing, you know, it's easy, just lift and shift. But, you know, once again, even in some of our broader sessions, we're talking about what works, what doesn't work. You know, we're being very open that not everything will be autonomous. CPAT, we're getting more and more people using that and getting comfortable with it, more people testing things. So I think there's a lot of momentum going in that space. There was an announcement that EBS has been certified. It's certified on dedicated, but it's still in a sort of a limited availability. So it's not sort of generally available yet, but they have completed, I guess, a milestone. Once again, we probably aren't going to have customers jumping over themselves to go to autonomous on EBS, but the fact that it's now been announced as being certified means we can have that conversation as part of a future plan. In my experience, you know, you start out with like we've had conversations with payments customers, and they obviously go, well, that's probably too much for us, we'll go with something else. But if they think about it as being applicable for that, then the something else becomes a lot easier to digest, because they sort of get in the mindset that that may be what they want. So so that was a big announcement, something that's been waiting for a long time, but still limited availability. So if someone says, can we just deploy it? Not quite yet, though. In saying that, Josh and I are having a call with our lift services team later today and the product management team, and we're going to look to stand up an environment and get the lift services specialists to understand what that can do.
That's cool. That's cool. Now, what's this thing called Oracle Alloy? Where does that fit?
Oracle Alloy. So that, my understanding of that is that's the it's the ability for customers to, for sort of like a large partner to get dedicated. It's on top of dedicated region. So you get a dedicated region, but then you can then sort of multi-customer it out to different customers, and you're able to then create their own look and feel, able to create their own rate card. So you can, you know, it's basically a sort of becoming a hosting provider, but then we provide the framework to give different look and feel, different rate cards, different experience for the different customers. So sort of the partner would or whoever bought it would be like the white label, and then they would then be able to provide a cloud environment for different end customers, both commercially and from a look and feel perspective.
So if you're an organization like a DXC or an Accenture, say across all the police authorities, or maybe all across Queensland government, you can actually have this sort of capability where the organization is creating a nice cloud shop front for all of your databases, whether they're autonomous, whether they're exit or type related, and then a bunch of PaaS services.
And it's sort of, like the dedicated region is bought by the buyer, and then they can, sort of, as you say, shop front it out to different providers. There was a lot of interest apparently from Japan, because Japan is very much a partner-led organization, like business out there. So yeah, there's some interesting conversations there, but I think it's dedicated region only, as far as I understand it.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, I just went left field with that.
That's okay.
So I'll let you keep going with your, the things you were thinking would be worth sharing on this autonomous and Apex Zoom.
Yeah, so there was I think the developer focus generally with that earlier conversation. We definitely we had some sessions on developers generally, and then developers specifically for autonomous. So I think that's always good. So I've got a deck here. I'm not going to go through it all, but it's for a bit of reference. But here's some of the items where we had a whole presentation on developers, looking at the cloud native, microservices, sort of all the buzzwords, but then we go into detail around, how it could work for people. So, I think there was a lot of really nice messaging around that. I've sort of put in a few references to some of the presentations, because these presentations will all now start filtering through. Hopefully everyone's aware for the internal audience. There's a site. I can share it again if people haven't seen that. But yeah, lots of updates on technology, cloud at customer, autonomous on cloud at customer. We're starting to get some good momentum in those conversations as well. Managing and monitoring. So all of these are sort of 30 to 40 minute sessions. So just a bit of a flavor of the depth and breadth of the content and the engagements at Open World. Then the other area, like George Lumpkin, his main session. So he's sort of the vice president in database development for autonomous database shared. His session was all on the Lakehouse again. So even though I don't know if I think the Lakehouse as a concept opens up a lot of conversations, and it still resonates quite well as a how are you doing things. And I think more and more customers are starting to realize that what they thought they were doing isn't quite working. So we just have to be quite persistent in having those conversations with customers to sort of highlight the capabilities and the speed that we can do things. So yeah, we've all seen the sort of the general lakeout concept where we've got any data source, we've got all of our tools that are provided by the autonomous database and the different the technologies we can support, and then how you can use applications and BI tools on the other side. So we're trying to be very sort of we can take heterogeneous sources and outputs. A couple of the examples, we now integrate with Google Cloud Platform. So once again, that multi-cloud, making it easy to get data out of different cloud providers, making it easy to connect to them. So improve security protocols and policy. So all of this work to say, if you want to get the data from somewhere else, but then do the querying here because we can do it effectively, we're making it easier rather than doing that lock-in. Sort of Larry's, we're breaking down the garden walls analogy from his keynote. Yeah. And similarly, it's getting the data and then processing the data, because it's one thing that people say, well, we've got data lakes, we're storing it all. But if it's hard to process and you can't do it easily, so we're making it easy to process different data types, but also optimizing it. So it's like Oracle's just sort of rinse and repeat the same process. Like whatever customers want, we'll roll it in, and then we'll make it more secure and more performant and easier to manage. So I think that was a pretty consistent theme across a lot of the sessions. That's good. Hey, have you noticed we've got Brad Tewksbury joined us on this Zoom call? I did notice that. So it would be remiss of me to not share I didn't even know that he was coming, but I did have it in my my little update deck. There was an announcement for the Oracle Analytics Accelerator. So people are probably familiar with the e-business analytics accelerator that Oracle Consulting have been, implementing for a number of years. It's been reasonably successful in the APAC region. Brad sort of saw the concept and thought it was a great concept, so he's been advocating it globally. He's been getting some good outcomes there, and I might get him to give a quick update. But I guess the announcement is more that this is, rather than it being a we'll tell the salespeople and the salespeople may tell the customers, we've announced it as a capability that we have. So the cat's out of the bag. So hopefully this gets a lot broader awareness within our customer base, and we'll get more people asking about it and be interested in the benefits of it. Brad, was there anything you wanted to add on that?
I'll just say that I'll share with you all when I get it. We had at CloudWorld, we had the CIO from A2 Milk from Australia, flew to Las Vegas and actually presented on stage with us his use case. So was very well received. There's a recording of that, should be coming late this week, early next week. So I'll share with you, Jason, you can send out, or Franco, you can send out to the broader audience.
Yeah. But
by and large, what he basically presented is his case of, frustration across the enterprise with getting, analytics out. It's no surprise, right? Many organizations are having frustration building these data models that give them access to pre-built reports and across the myriad of KPIs for finance and supply chain and procure to pay data coming out of EBS, and for that matter ERP Fusion as well. So that's what we've done. We basically have created an end-to-end solution with the data governance and security all included, and basically just jumpstarts, allowing customers to jumpstart enterprise reporting for these applications, these mission critical applications. So yeah, as Jason said, that we've got about I think 10 or so customers in production in just Australia alone, a lot in Melbourne specifically, and we're ramping up quickly across the globe to some 60 or so companies in the last year and a half that we've been issuing this. And I can just say that the uptick in the positive feedback across the eBusiness Suite user base, customer base is astounding. I'd say 8 out of every 10 customers I talk to, is very interested in wanting to implement this, and it's an open model. And that's one of the things they love about it, because now they can add in other data types from other vendors as well, because everyone's looking to do that. So, and just kind of a teaser, we'll be creating a similar solution for PeopleSoft and JD Edwards in the next 6 to 12 month time frame as well, just based on the success we've had with EBS.
Yeah, so it's obviously it's obviously gaining good traction that it gets announced in open world presentations, things like that. So yeah, it's hopefully that'll re-engage some more conversations around that. And then just finally, the other updates, Franco, were in around the database actions and the tools. So improved data loading, improved transforms, so a lot more sort of ease of use. So we were trying to attract developers and analysts who need to load some data but don't want to know how to use ODI or a more complicated tool. So for simple transformations, simple data flows, and also simple analytics, we're providing more and more capabilities in there to really make that database actions sort of a one-stop shop for your basic use cases, I would say, sort of for user to user, one-on-one sort of use cases. So a lot of focus on that as well. And then finally, there was a sort of a coming soon announcement around data sharing. We had discussed that about a month ago, I think, when there was a blog around it as an upcoming feature, sort of an open API for that being a publisher and a receiver. We think that'll also be very interesting. Snowflake do something similar, but they only do Snowflake to Snowflake. So we think we've taken a more standards-based approach to that. So, if we have got customers looking at Snowflake for that, I think we can say, well, we can do a similar thing, but we're doing it in a much more, or much less restrictive model. So, and that shows once again, Oracle looking to make it easy to connect to partners. Oracle looking to make it easier to do the things rather than say sort of the historical lock-in. So yeah, I think some quite nice examples of the change in Oracle and a really strong strategy.
That's great. Hey, thank you, Brad, for joining us, and thank you, Jason, for today's update. So that ends the formal part of the session. So we'll stop the recording now.